Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today. I'll hand it over to Hilberto, but we'll get started in just a moment.
Yes, hello everyone. We're gonna wait just a minute while we wait for anyone that's still in the waiting room to join. But yeah, I'll meet you right back in a minute. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this webinar with Vectorworks, a proud sponsor of the AIS for a while now, ever since 2018. This year, they'll be hosting 4 Vectorworks University workshops, training students on various aspects of their software, ranging from iterative design, real-time rendering, and tips and tricks for maximizing the design power of Vectorworks. To get started, I'm going to introduce Luis Ruiz, our speaker today, and I just want to encourage y'all to continue to ask questions. You can leave them in the chat, and at the end of the webinar, we're gonna be reading them and getting all your questions answered. So, Luis, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Hello, rooftop design aficionados. Welcome to our presentation all about the in and outs of designing and modeling rooftop spaces in the heart of Chicago. Today, we're diving deep into the world of custom 3D modeling, where we'll show you how to bring even the most out-of-the-box shapes to life in your designs. We'll tackle the art of presenting furniture layouts like a pro, say goodbye to boring proposals. We'll show you how to make yours stand out. But that's not all. Ever wonder how light can completely transform a space? We'll explore just how powerful illumination can be in shaping the vibe of a place. And of course, we can't forget about rendering techniques, so get ready to learn some cool tricks, including how to master redshift styles for that extra wow factor. So grab your seat and get ready to level up your rooftop design game with us.
Thank you, Louise. And welcome to our webinar, everyone. I'll be giving a quick overview of the project background before Louise and I will speak more about the build-up and various techniques used to create this project. So let's dive right in. Our project is around the rooftop garden trend, which is all about adding a vertical green space that offers another area for socializing and networking, such as a bar, lounge, and event space. The space that we have created and will show in this webinar needed to have style and a unique atmosphere. In terms of amenities, the brief requested several areas to be planned in, such as a welcome lobby, bar and dining, main lounge, a private event room, a mezzanine gallery, and an outdoor patio, which will be explored through our space planning. As we know, a rooftop garden has several benefits for the environment, such as reducing the urban heat island effect, as these types of roofs absorb less heat than traditional rooftops, which can help reduce the overall temperature in urban areas. In addition, rooftop gardens are beneficial for improving air quality around the surrounding area by filtering out pollutants from the air. These spaces are also valuable for providing habitat for wildlife, such as birds, which are needed more than ever in built-up urban areas. The building we'll be working with is located by Lake Michigan in Chicago. Although not too far from a large park, the immediate surrounding area is filled with tons of skyrise buildings. Here's an image of what the existing rooftop looks like. As you can see, it currently looks like a space that doesn't cultivate socializing, hosting events, or wanting to spend hours in. However, if you're from that area, or have seen one of Louis' previous webinar with our customer Eastlake, you may be familiar with the building. It is in the same location as Eastlake's active campaign. If you want to learn more about that webinar, please have a look on our university platform. Okay, let's get back to our inspiration. So since our brief is about creating a rooftop lounge space with an accompanying garden, there's nowhere best to look for inspiration than from nature itself. We looked at the forms of caves and their natural embedded curves and cocoon-like shapes. We observed shells and water features, including waves and ripples. And we also took a closer look at the light projection that occurs in nature. Lastly, we took additional inspiration from modern interpretations of these cavernous spaces. The mood board shown here incorporates some of the organic shapes we planned to include in the space. The lines from the inspiration will be included in our lighting and furniture, but also a combination of smooth and rough surfaces, such as ceramics and boucle. Before delving into the design, Louise and I investigated several existing restaurants and event space layouts, so we could better understand the relationships between each connected space and how that would translate over to our project. The representation in this current visual is a simple sketch render with colored shapes over an existing layout. From this, we were then able to generate a key to better visualize the connections. In these examples, one thing that we found was that the food preparation, which is in the blue color, is usually connected to the bar in the green color, or adjoining to the dining space, which is in the yellow color. And both of these options are fine, as they increase the efficiency of getting food and drinks to the guests with minimal barriers. But now that we have a better understanding, let's talk more about our existing site. As an avid tennis player, Louise worked out that our space is approximately equivalent to 9 tennis courts and a clubhouse, so we have plenty of surface area to work with. For our space, we didn't want to just have an indoor green space, so we left a lot of surface area free for the outdoor city viewing and larger plants. Using the space styles, we were also able to create a graphic legend color grid. There are about 21 different spaces in our design, which includes those that were mentioned in the brief. So here's a simplified 3D view of our space, and another view of the space with some of the existing and proposed walls included. This is useful to show the client where there will be partition walls and how the space will flow with architectural structures building up. As this project is showing the collaboration of 2 designers, we sought to use project sharing, which allowed us to divide the work by checking out separate layers and objects. One of the major benefits that we saw using project sharing was working with a colleague from a different time zone. I'm based in London and Louise is based in Baltimore. And for the most part, that's fine, because technically we could have worked on the file at set times of the day. However, there's a significant part of our day which overlaps, meaning previously only one of us could be in the file at that time. But not with project sharing. Not only were we able to work on the file at the same time, but I was also able to work in metric units, and Louise was able to continue in imperial. And we also had the additional benefit of keeping track of our changes made by leaving comments. To make project sharing run as smooth as possible, I'll give you an insight on how our file is set up. The roof level is split into several layers, one for the outdoor landscape with water features, one for the existing and proposed architectural structures, 3 furniture option layers, a mezzanine layer, and of course a spectacular roof structure. So when one of us was working on the landscape, the other could work on the furniture layout. There are also a lot of classes with a naming structure and filters to help us find and adjust the attributes of our objects quicker. The sheets have a number and arrangement for each section, And additionally, we have a folder structure set up in our resource manager, as we have a lot of symbols, and this can help us manage the resources. For example, did you know you could attach a record format to an entire folder? Well, you can, and it will save so much time and make things easier with these folder structures set up. Lastly, Louise and I will be presenting this webinar using Save Views, so keep an eye out for some of the transitions that are now available for each Save View separately. Okay, I think that's enough background for now. Let me hand you over to Louise to show you how some of the architectural structures were created. So over to you, Louise.
Hello, everyone. Happy to have the opportunity again to share how we approach a new project with unlimited budget in sight, a real dream. This architectural project started by exploring the concept of a man-made mount, and what better tool than using a subdivision cage modeling. After many alternatives, we landed on a shape that we all responded to. From that point, extracting horizontal contours was a key. Why? Because the integrated side modeling command requires just that, 3D information. The extruded contour side model was dumbed down to a simple solid. Then a copy was made and placed about 14 inches below. Finally, a simple subtract solid operation created our first shell, something that had steps above and below the surface. Not too long ago, our friend Tony was giving us a lesson on how to create a side model, and that was the spark that put all the pieces in motion. But in this case, this mount would be hollow, and our interior project would take place underneath. We call it the grotto. The interior layer is basically a network of generic walls. But if you look closer, you'll notice how almost all of these objects have tops in the shapes of steps. This is because they all extend to the shell above. As I navigate around, you'll notice the public and cargo elevators walls. Some are really tall, about 30 feet. The bathroom's walls were flat because they're under a mezzanine, but this curved wall down here by the private room clearly shows its complexity. By now you must be wondering how we gave these walls a custom top. So you get the concept. I prepare a simple wall. Then we'll just select it, and from the AAC menu, we locate and activate the command Fit Walls to Object. From this list, we must select the layers that contain our constraining objects, in this case, the shell. The process is done, and as you can see, the program did its best to calculate the geometry, but since this is not a simple gable roof, it got us very close. Fortunately, wall peaks can be reshaped manually, and that was typical for this project. Once the main walls were in place, we needed to enclose the shell with large curtain walls. There are about 5 from different building fronts, some similar and others with slight modifications. The curtain wall tool has been around for more than a decade. We can easily access different styles from the library. In some cases, we like to make changes to the default settings, and that is totally possible. We may just need to delete or add frames and just change the distance. Now, what makes this tool unique in this program is its flexibility not only to change its peaks but rescale frames. For example, when I touch the frame, this highlights in red, and now we can make it shorter, longer, delete it, change its angle, and add all sorts of profiles configurations. Doors can also be inserted in larger panels. It is just a matter of selecting one style from the library. Since we're talking about glass doors, on the side by the events room, we have a larger opening, and we needed that space to be totally closed or entirely open to the garden next to it. The solution was a folding door. Luckily, this latest software release offers multiple folding configurations: bifold single, bifold double, and my latest favorite, multiple foldings. And this last configuration allows to explore the number and sizes of vertical panels. Once our architectural shell was completed, our job was to provide rough views of the project so our interior designer could start thinking about the layout. This is where our camera tool comes into place. If I zoom in closer, you'll see how we added camera objects pointing towards the entrance from the elevators, the waterfall as the main focal point, and a couple of views of the bar and the open lounge areas. While this camera object is selected, you'll notice how the info palette provides a variety of visual effects that we'll need for our renderings, like bloom and depth of field. Now, let's see what a camera sees. We are now inside of it. We can move and point in all directions. This is a fine method to set up the final location. Now that we've rested past the front desk, we'll use this view to talk about lighting. From the lighting options palette, as you know, we can set up the number of bounces. 4 is recommended for bright interiors. There is already an automatic level of brightness in the atmosphere. This can be controlled by turning it on and off. We can adjust the level of brightness and even force a special color tint, just to make the scene feel like there is a blue sky outside or a hot and sunny summer day. When dealing with a model where all the objects are white, adding a bit of ambient occlusion helps to identify the changes of surfaces, like forcing a little shade in those creases. Experience tells me that 25 is too little and 100% is too much. It is all about striking the right balance. By now, we can take our first screenshot and pass it along. The rendering style that we'll be using as we work in the model that makes all of the objects look solid is called shaded. In previous webinars, we talked about HDRI backgrounds. These are basically image domes that produce light at the same time. Notice how I drop different backgrounds and our space totally changes. The tint is different and it feels different. In our case, I'll be using a few of my favorites. Some include surrounding buildings during the day and some nighttime city skylines. One important source of light is, of course, the sun, the object we call the heliodont. It has its own brightness, color, temperature, and can be adjusted by country, city location, and time of the day. If we dim the ambient brightness again, we can see how the tall funnels also have the function of light wells. And in time, we kept adding some important elements like a huge 3D art wall that divides the private events room from the main open lounge. We also added a mezzanine with glass railing and proposed a floating stairs, following the curved walls by the lobby. Our first view is only lit by a white dome outside. This gives the illusion of working with a white model, a card model. Later, and just for curiosity, we added just a few textures. We knew we wanted larger floor tiles and wood for accent on those vertical line patterns, just to bring some warmth into the space. Later, the designer Kesun and the rest of the guys agreed that we needed to make those ceiling contours more prominent, more visible, so we added strips of white glows. I think that was a smart suggestion. We also knew that we wanted lots of tiny sparks in the ceiling, so we added dozens of light symbols that follow the contours. And finally, the covered lounge. After several tests, we knew we needed the light to have shape. These are possible by adding IES information to the spotlight objects. We quickly learned that providing names or IDs to our light and symbols would help immensely to identify these in our renderings views so we can turn them on and off as needed. By then, my part of the project was completed. My architect mind reached its maximum, and the overall shade and partitions were in place. It was now time to pass it on to our interior designer.
Thank you for setting the scene, Louise. For the next few minutes, I'll be focusing on 3 main areas: the bar, the lounge, and the event space. As required by the brief, we wanted 3 different layouts for showcasing the various furnitures and decorative changes. So to create separation for the 3 zones, in between the bar and the lounge, we have the waterfall with other water features, which also links back to the brief and having elements that connect to nature. In between the lounge and the event space, we have structural walls to create a sound barrier, and all 3 spaces have direct access to the outdoor garden. To help sell the idea, we've included several sketch and line drawings, as they're a great option for explaining the concept without the client feeling tied down to a particular graphic or texture used. And having a 3D model helps speed up this process because it helps generate the line and artistic renders with little effort, which you can further develop with your own styles. With doing so, I can have several placeholder furniture in my model to generate different layouts and positioning whilst I finalize the design. In layout 1, this space represents a casual space where people can come, sit down, relax, and work if they wanted to. It has several different seating styles from tables to lounge sofas. We also have this art wall, which is featured in all 3 options as a statement feature. The shapes again links back to our inspiration boards. In lounge 2, we have a more open space with simpler organic shapes, softer graphics, and we've included earthly tones and wave-like forms. In this layout, we have several custom geometries such as lamps, tables, and sofas. In layout 3, we wanted to take this up a notch with a more luxurious feel. So let's adjust the transition speed to get a better view of the various elements. There are bar height tables, lamps, and additional lounge seating with carpets zoning each space. Louise, do you want to highlight how we created some of these elements and props in the space? Perhaps the art wall, organic sofa, or the hanging vines?
I don't mind if I do. Let's get on the making of the big art wall. The process started with a series of 2D rectangles. The goal is to turn them into volumes, and that we can do by using our push-pull tool or by selecting the objects and turn them into extrudes. No matter the method, we wanted the volumes to look just like this. Next, we needed to create a couple of large pipes. For that, we needed circles and pads. The extrude along pad command under the model menu was the key to the operation. But once the object was finished, from the info palette, we altered the scale of one end by a factor of 0.10 of the original size. And that's how we got that pointy effect. A recent new tool, the 3D Dragger, came in handy for reshaping the path of these massive pipes without getting inside the core of the object. Same process for the second set, and now we have our extrude along path objects ready. Then it was just a matter of getting them in position and do a subtraction operation. Basically, carving objects off from the original volume. Once the final solid was completed, time to select a wood texture from a resource manager and apply it to the object by just dragging the icon to it. Later, we added some lights, and we had a first draft for a big divider art wall. Next, we have this beautiful modular sofa. That was a good call by Kisun. So, as you can see, we started by putting together a series of individual extrudes, nothing extraordinary. The key operation on this one is the application of fillets of different dimensions to all of the cushion edges. This can be done by selecting an entire surface and apply an overall fillet. These solid objects provide an interesting mechanic called history, and this allows us to select specific edges and redimension at will. Having access to a modeling history list is more than useful for this type of work that needs constant exploration. Again, once the solid was done, finding the correct texture with the look we wanted took a few tries. But once we set on one, we quickly realized the bottom base needed to be painted in wood. I'm glad we had access to a newer tool called Per Face Texture. Even individual faces can be corrected in case the mapping needed to have a different orientation. This sofa got converted into a symbol, but if we look at it from the top, it won't look good in our drawings. Too many lines. So we got a new task, creating a hybrid symbol by adding a simple 2D drawing representing the top view. And done. Hybrid symbol is ready. And here's a test rendering before it got moving to the master file. There was also an interesting lamp that needed to be modeled. I'll show you the steps since I kept a record of the procedure. Not complicated. Basically, we needed a cylinder as a starting point. From there, we added a base and created one of the wings, alert. That wing needed to be a symbol, so the file size is kept at minimum. Then a duplicate array took care of making the copies that frame the glowing slim cylinder. And finally, we turned it into a new symbol. What is interesting here is that we started testing rendering styles. Since we wanted nighttime renderings, perhaps super details would not be visible, so you can see the difference between Redshift and Renderworks, but processing time had no comparison. Either way, we were set to use a bit of post-production by a tool called Image Effect, just to give it a pop to those final renderings. We also knew Kesun wanted to include this elegant bar stool, so we got to model it. But using a different technique, my apologies, no time on this one to show you all of the step-by-step diagrams, but instead, let's select the subdivision object that gives us the illusion of the cushion. We can see how the cage was manipulated until its final form. And since this is a new symbol for the bar, let's hear from Kesun how she used it for the layout.
So for the bar area, again we use several different sketches to show the various proposed layouts before going into more detail. The main changes you'll see in the bar options will be the feature wall behind the bar itself, and the seating positions. In all three layouts we use the same equipment, which are placed in the equipment class. You'll also see the winery in the background and the cloakroom by the entrance. Like the first option for Lounge 1, Bar 1 has a more casual atmosphere with wooden textures, colourful lights, signage, and of course our props. In Bar Option 2, linking back to the earthly tone from the lounge, we have a lot of nude and beige textures in the space. From the mood board, we also incorporate this very detailed chair design through custom modeling to show the ridged effect that links back to the lines and curves from our inspiration, which Louise can cover later on. I think you'll be very impressed. We also added in a foliage wall to encompass some of the natural elements from outside, a custom table lamp inspired by mushrooms, golden tints and pieces to lift the beige tones, and a wall shelf for displaying drink brands. In Bar 3, we have changed the bar front features to be a more linear pattern to go with the wooden wall features behind the bar. We removed the overhead light which is by the bar and placed lamps for more intimate feeling. And in this design we modeled the bar stool, but we also had readily available symbols to use. And in this case we used the manufacturer Knoll Platinum symbol from the resource manager for the dining table and chairs. There is also a tag that links directly to their website, so you can get more information on the product for creating record formats and furniture schedules. Before I move on to the events room, Louise, can you please show us a close-up view of that beige leather upholstered chair?
Certainly. But before I show you the dining chair, let me show you another piece that uses subdivision as a modeling approach. I'll just describe the sequence on my screen. We had a simple extruded rectangle. This one was converted into a subdivision, but iteration 0, so it's easier to visualize. Then, with the split mode selected, we added multiple breaks on the cage. I'll do one bottom square as an example and then pull it down to match the height. Now that we have the basic blocks, let's change its iteration to 3, so it looks closer to the final product. From a top view, we'll select some middle vertices and rescale it inwards. And since the top needed to be flat, we'll use our crease mode and flatten these 4 quadrants. As usual, we tested its final texture and converted it to a symbol. I just showed you that piece so you have a better idea of the benefits of having a subdivision tool inside your BIM software. For example, this furniture piece, I am so glad it was made in-house. No steps, but look at the cushion. Getting it to look comfortable is an interesting trial, and you can almost feel it. Now the back of it, I say is a masterpiece by our in-house modeler Tim Connors. I just hope I don't ruin it. Nope, I better just leave it the way it was. The leather texture was a good call, and making it a symbol object helped to keep the file size lighter.
Thank you for showing us that, Louise. So for the event space, as the client wasn't fixed on a function of the space, I had a lot of fun exploring the various layouts, and it gave me an opportunity to develop several scenarios and pitch those concepts to the client. And using some of the sketch renders, which I generate from this file, it helped to convey a better feel of the space. This was fairly easy to do because we had 3 design proposals separated across 3 different layers, which made it more manageable to turn off certain objects on other layers. In this space, majority of the lighting is coming directly from the ceiling lights on the ceiling layer, or the LED screens, which are each on their own class. There's also a wide opening from the door, which adds a lot of natural light during the daytime. For option 1, we went with a lecture-style room with rows of tables and chairs, a stage area, props, and a graphic wall. This is perfect for more formal use of the space, such as presentations. For option 2, we incorporated Norton, Fiji, and Geiger reframer lounge chairs from the Resource Manager, custom planters with various plants, and swapped out the graphics, linking it back to the calming natured inspired theme. And this space shall act as a quiet lounge space. For option 3, we'll be continuing the luxurious feel of the bar and lounge spaces. We wanted this option to feel like a classy private room performance space where it could be hired out by musicians. Using symbols for these options made it more efficient for managing the project and swapping out furniture options. It also made the file faster as not as much geometry recalculation was needed. In addition, with trying to develop the design, we found these detailed instrument props from the Resource Manager, which we thought helped hold the story together. Louise, can you show a bit more detail of how we managed the graphics wall?
Certainly. Here's my recommendation for this typical challenge. For interiors, instead of forcing a texture to one side of a wall, try these short steps. From the modeling toolset, select the Extract NURBS tool. Then set the mode to extract only surfaces. Then click on the wall faces, and once it's highlighted, check the tick mark. While the surfaces are selected, convert them to shells, just something thin would do. Now, from the Resource Manager, drag and drop a texture. In our case, we applied a mural image. From the Info palette, you can resize the image as needed. There is also more direct mapping manipulation, but making use of the mapping tool. Just click on a plane, relocate the image, and resize it as much as you want. This is the same process we use for all graphics you see on the walls. Just remember to place the objects under a class for visibility control. Now that we have sorted out some of those texturing elements, let's dig a little deeper into the rendering exploration within this Grotto file. Let's start right from the beginning with Redshift. Redshift is a rendering engine and is a new option alongside Renderworks. Redshift uses Redshift by Maxon and Renderworks uses Cineware by Maxon, both of which produce amazing results. Best of all, they are both available to everyone. But bear in mind, when figuring out what your machine is capable of, that Redshift uses the CPU and Renderworks uses a GPU. Throughout the iterative changes of a model, it is best to understand when to use certain renders. You will need to decide if you want to show artistic expressions, basic silhouettes, or do you need a quick or higher quality render with textures and lighting to show updates as the project develops. During the making of the lounge in all of its versions, we kept a few early screenshots. These are all in shaded mode, and we included a bit of haze in its atmosphere, just to see if we could achieve a softer look. This is one of the first renderings using only Redshift. Something new in our rendering settings is that we just use one single bounce of lights. With the Helium light object we created earlier, we can add in more details such as lit fog coming through the opening. This really sells the idea of a sunny day. This rendering was a happy surprise since there are no light objects, only glow textures in many colors and gradients. The rendering took only, I think, about 10 minutes. With a camera object fixed on a single angle, it was fairly easy to swap all of the bar options including chairs, tables, and extra props. With these renderings, we learned that there is no need to keep lights on objects that are not in the scene. These went fairly fast, all Redshift, between 10 and 15 minutes each. I think with this view, we actually achieve our modern inspiration for the public bar. For the events room, I think we really capture the look and feel of every layout. I guess a good old friend Wes Garner would love to present in this happy room. I imagine the event in this room is all about resting and having a well-deserved peaceful time. With this room, we tried something new, combining foliage objects and hidden glowing sticks behind. I feel this layout would be perfect for a holiday event. There is a rare feature in Vectorworks that perhaps is not available in any other BIM program: image projections. This benefit will truly help you gain that commission. Would you like to have a drink and look at the galaxies? Or perhaps have a beer in the middle of a forest? Or how about a deep dive in the ocean? And finally, how about exploring a cave? Okay, I'm going to hand the screen and mic back to Kisun to wrap this up for us by putting all the pieces together using the cloud.
In this last section of the webinar, we'll be highlighting the cloud benefits and using it to enhance your design story by using multiple techniques from it to generate props and to create presentations. Whilst I talk about how you can incorporate these into your project, please scan the QR code on the screen and have a glimpse at the project through the tour. I'll leave this up for a second for you to scan on your phones or tablets. Also, bear in mind, we've left a few Easter eggs for you to find as you explore the file. And I'll come back to this and show you how I created it in a moment, but first, let's talk about creating some of the props. In the file, we created several custom props using the cloud and mobile features, including the rock feature by the entrance and plenty of Louise and Tony's placed around. These can be a great addition to the file because if your client wants to see some of their items in your new proposals, maybe you can just take a few images and create a model. I'm sure they would appreciate it. But also, over time, you'll start to build up your very own Entourage library file. These props can be generated through mobile devices or the cloud portal. Simply take lots of images and click the Photos to 3D button. Once completed, you'll see a few additional files and the completed USDZ and OBJ files, which can both be imported into Vectorworks, by the way. To get the best out of this process, make sure your space is well lit and if possible has a simple background. Another important thing to bear in mind is to make sure that there's enough contrast between the primary object and the background. When trying to capture elements like the face, we recommend 30+ images from ear to ear and at different angles. Tony was a really great sport as he had to remain as still as possible. Another tip is when you're working with hands, try and keep the fingers closed or hidden. Or for a whole body model, try and take several shots at every 20-degree angle to get more accuracy. Also, why not end your design proposal with a tour of the space once you have your final designs with props? Panoramas are a great way of doing this. Simply set your 3D view with all the relevant layers and classes on, then go to File menu, Export, Export Panorama. There you'll be able to choose a range of render styles from Shaded, Redshift, and Renderworks, resolution, as well as where to process and store the file. We chose the cloud storage, which will automatically add the job to the server to be processed. Once the files are ready, simply head over to the cloud portal and create a tool, where you can add all your resources to the slide in one go. Then simply reorder them in the correct position, which will make the editing process more efficient as it will take less time trying to locate these images later on. Once that's done, simply drag an image from the resources onto the panorama and set in the camera position. You're then able to tweak the pins by adjusting the roll, the yaw, and pitch properties, or you can just direct the pin to look at the camera. You can adjust the border, the image size, pin size, and other settings. Once you're happy with the pin, you can save it as a style and move on to dropping the pin camera positions onto the other views. So this is where the fun really begins, where you can set up various styles and directional arrows for each section. As you can see, I have a directional for my bar area and I'm about to place one for my lounge space. I'm going to set the view to the covered lounge area. I'm then going to be able to save that as a style, so I have two options. Then I'll navigate to the mezzanine level where I can place another pin to the lounge area but open up to the wider view of the lounge. Once I save that, I'll go back to the mezzanine layer. I'll set a pin for that section, set the view, and change the style to a standard pin. Now let's move over to the event space. I'll set a view which focuses towards a stage and a direction on it. And from the stage, I can have a standard pin that faces towards the other side of the event space and then out to the patio area, where we can have multiple pins, one looking at the sky as well as one navigating back to the building. To add on a level of navigating the space, you can create a tool map by adding an image to the base, and then move on to dragging the pins onto the map. As you can see, we still have the same order from earlier, so we'll just continue to add them in the correct location. In addition, the pins we placed earlier are still stored inside, so we won't have to redo those. From the tool map above, the viewer can simply click on any of these pins to navigate to that view. And once you're happy with the presentation, click on the Share Link option and share via an email, a link, or QR code. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. Louise and I are hoping that you've taken away something from today's webinar. To recap, we showed you several ways in which you can use embedding geometry from the Resource Manager, how you can create your own props in various ways, and how you can model your own geometry from step walls to subdivision. We spoke about how to organize your files when collaborating with project sharing, but also for the ease of generating design options for your clients. Louise went through techniques for setting up lighting options, as well as some tips for managing the lights. By the way, Louise, that spotlight projection was very cool. We also examined different rendering processes to help with the development of your design, including highlighting some of the benefits of Redshift. And finally, we demonstrated the process for creating your very own tours through the cloud portal using panoramas.
Great. Well, thank you to our presenters, especially to Luis, who is here to answer any questions that we have about this incredible project that we just saw being developed with Vectorworks software. Now we want to open it up for questions so that we can start our Q&A session. Before that, I just want to say that I am just amazed by how we can use BIM software such as Vectorworks to go from the very general conceptual stages of a project to even like the very detail of every single furniture item that we have there, and even like going into the presentation and representation of the project and communicating all that through virtual tours and renders. I think that that is like very interesting to see software that is capable of doing all of that. So I just want to remind everyone that we have the floor open for questions. And I want to read one comment by Julia Ander here. She says, "This is an incredible project, and I think the project sharing features are so helpful, especially the ability to work at the same time and using different units. I'm especially interested in the collaborative efforts demonstrated between interior architecture and interior design to get the desired effect. What advice do you have for architecture students that do not currently have experience collaborating with people from adjacent disciplines, but are interested in doing similar work?"
Hi, Gilberto. How you doing?
Then great.
So
With you.
I really like that you actually pick on the little things that you saw in the project, because a lot of work was actually went into that project. But let me get back to that question from Julia. Yes, the whole project actually started with not only two. I know that Kisun was there, and that she's the interior designer, and I was supposed to be the architect. But there's also two more. One was actually Tony, my friend Tony. He's the landscape designer. But we also have another friend, Tim Connors, mastering 3D modeling. For all of those little pieces that you saw there, we need help. So one of the recommendations is from the beginning of the project, we define, okay, who's gonna do what? And now that we know that how many people are gonna be working on this project, one person needed to set up the file, the master file, with all the especially the control of the design layers. Define, okay, this is going to be the shell, this is going to be the layer they are dedicated to option one for the interiors, lounge, for example, and then there was another layer for someone's gonna work on the outside of the project, the patio in that case. And so once you define all the layers and the units and everything is just set, the file organization is the key. So at that point, what we did is convert the file to a project sharing file. Once you take that project sharing file, you need to set up where are we going to host this? And there's different places. You can put it on Dropbox. You can put it on the OneDrive, for example. In our case, we use, I think we use Cloud Server. So once we define this is where the file is going to sleep, this is the location, everybody pulls what we call a working file. Now, one guy, in that case, I think it was me in that case, needed to be the master of the file. So that means level of permissions. In that case, for example, Gilberto, if you were working on the file, let's say you can work on layer 1, 2, and 3, and that's it. So you don't mess up other people's work. And then again, in the case for Kesun, for example, hey, Kesun, you're going to work on layers 4, 5, and 6. Perfect. Team, you only want to work on resource manager. You're only going to add symbols and work on textures, and you're going to put it right here, but don't touch anything else. So the level of permissions when you start a project is very important. Otherwise, everybody can just do anything at the same time and it becomes a mess. So I hope that answered the question, but um, there's also a lot of little learning to do on at what point someone says, hey, can you give me permission to use your file? Sure, hold on, let me liberate it. Okay, now it's free, now you can touch it. Okay, so that was the reason why we decided to not only work on like nobody's at the office at the same time. So we actually have people in different places, different states, and different countries. So interesting to work on that.
That is very interesting, Luis, especially like knowing that there is a lot more to the use of Vectorworks software, like than we saw in the presentation, which was a lot. Like knowing that there are all these capabilities for like the administration and the control of people that are collaborating in it.
Yes. Based on previous experience of working in similar projects, we learned that as we're making the project, we're capturing scenes of the project and creating a little bit of report. So we always have a way to go back and tell the story. So basically, this webinar is all the evolution of the project. How do you start a project from nothing? And now, one of the things that we didn't add in this one, because when we were working on this project, I think we had version 2023, I believe, 2023 on Vectorworks. And as soon as we're finishing the project, now we have, for example, AI visualization inside the software. Like we cannot add that one. So, but we actually added a little bit of, we started adding AI into the mix for testing. For example, here's an idea, like some of the sketches as Kesun showed, we took some of those sketches and put them in our own AI, not in this version that you saw in the webinar, and then run it. And the prompt would only be, I need a bar that looks like a cave and control this type of materials. Watch out for this lighting, for example. And then we get option 1, option 2, option 3, option 4, option 5. And that's how we nailed it. This is the one. Now we're gonna now is the time to actually start modeling and adding the textures to a different detail. So that was really interesting. A lot of the questions that we get, especially in this project once we were done, is for example, hey, someone working the architectural side, but we saw that, for example, Kesun had 3 different ideas, 3 different styles. So how do you share that? So at the end of the video, there was an element when there's a wall and it's very flat, very, very sterile, just plain white, no textures. So she actually worked on extracting the surface of that wall. And then once you have that, especially we had a wall with a curved surface, so that becomes a shape that belongs only to the interior designer. So we don't touch the architectural part. And then on that one, we defined, well, this room will look better with this type of graphic. Okay, and then another type of graphic and another type of graphic. So in the same file, The whole idea is to have plenty of options. But how do you see all the different options? That's why in this presentation, you see a little section in the organization palette called Save Views. And that's when like Save View bar option 1. And that would turn on layers and turn off some layers. So you can always go back and work on those.
Interesting. So it seems like the possibilities are endless then.
I gotta tell you, I don't know if you noticed, for example, the navigation into the model.
Mhm.
That is another ticket. Um, there was no selecting the walkthrough and then moving around. And I'm going to show you the baby that I have here, for example. I don't know. Okay, there you go. So these little devices, these are the navigators, the 3D navigators. As soon as you start working 3D with a navigator like that, you go up and down, front and right, left and right, and you just can't live without those some of those things. It's actually really fun to work in 3D in this kind of software.
So it seems like there's also an element of hardware to it that can be compatible with the processes of designing a project like this. We have another question that does not go to the side of hardware, but it's by Cole Broad. And he says, apologies if I missed this portion of the presentation, but is Vectorworks plugin friendly, or are there any third-party plugins that users typically take advantage of?
Third-party plugins is something that we use. You use as needed, depending on the project that you need, that you require. For example, in our case, and it's not showing this project. One of the plugins that we connect now, and is one of my favorites, for example, is Veras. For example, is Veras sounds familiar? This just came out very, very recently, and it's so once you have the model, for example, and you open the window. It's a third-party plugin. You connect the window for visualization. It's another level of visualization based on the model that you have, and it goes really quick. What I like about those plugins is that they're more mature, and the editing in AI goes to a different level. So it's always nice to have in ours. I mean, we can create a lot of elements based by text only, for example. But once you connect another plugin, then you get the benefit of another helper.
Okay, interesting. So we've covered a lot. We covered collaboration, possibilities of like using even AI and the third-party plugins. I do have one additional question for you, Luis, and it is that for anyone that's interested in starting to use Vectorworks, that perhaps they have been using any other softwares, but that are interested in doing something like this project, but are just getting started out, what would be your advice so that they can get initiated and also like get ahead of the learning curve?
I gotta tell you, everybody, and by now, if you come from another software, try to find the similarities. For example, let's say that you just come from drafting in 2D. Perfect. So if you come from 2D and this is how you were used to create a simple rectangle, how are you going to do that in vectors? So once you find those similarities, that's key number one. Let's say for 2D drafting, the process might be the same. The names of the commands might be a little different. No problem. But let's say you come from another 3D application that we are used to maybe draw a shape and then pull it, draw a shape and pull it. We have the same in vectors. You just got to find what is the proper technique, but your mind's still the same. What is different is, okay, for example, you're coming from Rhino. That will be another application, NURBS modeling. Find the NURBS application inside this software. So you realize, okay, so we have the 2D drafting, the solid modeling, we have the NURBS modeling, and also on top that you may not have it in other places would be the subdivision, the cage modeling. So you little by little you find what is equal to what you know, and then you add day by day, you add a little extra. You got to experiment. The problem is to be stuck in your favorite tools and never move on, because then you won't be able to do the little lamps that we show you and the scanning of the tonics, for example. And so you're missing out on those aspects. How to learn it? My recommendation would be going to the Vectorworks University. and we have very little tutorials how to do something little by little. Always check out that. That will be a good way to learn this technology. I'm
That
still
is,
learning. I gotta
yeah,
say, I'm still learning, and I always find people who come up with new ideas and like, great, now I'm gonna use that and show that for the next webinar.
absolutely. That is great advice. There's also a comment by Jen. I don't know if Jen, you want to tell us a little bit more about Vectorworks University and the opportunities that Vectorworks offers for us.
Sure. So I popped some links and in the comments section. So our licenses for students are free. So you just have to create an account in our portal, and then you can download a free version of the license. As long as you're a student, you get access to that. And that portal sign-on will also get you into our university. And as Luis mentioned, there's a lot of resources there, but there's also a good starting point is our free associate certification. So you can go on there. This is just software basics. It'll take you a little while to get through it, but it shows you how to go through some of the things that Luis was talking about in his presentation. Saved views, viewports, all those different kinds of things. And you can look up a certain topic, or you can take the whole thing. Like I said, it's lengthy, but worthwhile. And then there's these getting started essential seminars. They're wonderful. So you can do getting started in Vectorworks Architect, getting started with Vectorworks. And I popped my email address in there because I oftentimes do get students saying, I need help with this or that. And I can connect them with people that can help. I can give you some links to resources. So if we just open up that dialogue, we can definitely help you get up to speed on the software.
That
And
is perfect. Thank you.
don't forget YouTube, our YouTube channel. A lot of little pieces there. And if you need help, the community board. Don't forget our community board. There's always someone there who is willing to help.
Yes, and that community board is also part of
Yes.
your portal sign-on. So you'll see that once you get into your portal, the license is there, the serial number, there's a link for support, tech support, there's a link for the community forum, there's a link for the university. So it's all kind of contained there, which is wonderful.
It is wonderful. I mean, it seems like Vectorworks gives us a lot of possibilities to do things, but also the support to get acquainted, to get started, and to like bring those great ideas and start developing them. Thank you both for everything.
And last piece, Gilberto. The
Yeah.
file is actually ready for download. In the Vectorworks University, that file that we just showed is ready for download. And now in the webinar, you only saw the 3D section, but the file that you can download, it has all the floor plans, sections, elevations, renderings. There's a lot of save views there and rendering styles that are already ready to be used. So download the file, you have way more than what we just saw in this webinar.
Okay, so there's a lot more to check out,
Oh,
definitely.
yes.
Thank you both for such an incredible webinar. And thank you to our partners at Vectorworks. We're very excited for all these opportunities and just in general excited to partner with you to provide these workshops to all of you throughout this fall. We already dropped the link to those in the chat, so you can put this on your calendars and start, reimagining workshops. Okay.
Thank you. It's been great.
Yes,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and we'll see each other soon.
Yes, have
Will
a
do.
great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.